Hi everybody, Dana Litwin here again, and welcome back to Tuesday Tips for Leaders of Volunteers. This week talking about recruitment and retention of volunteers from first contact to first shift and beyond. This week's Tuesday Tips, it's a little bit of a very short overview of a much deeper dive webinar I'm doing on October 19th with Roseanna Galindo. You may recognize her from a Priceless Advice and Tuesday Tips I did with her quite recently. And we're going to be doing a free webinar hosted by VSysOne. I'll put the registration link in the video description below if you want to join that conversation and deep dive. But for a quick overview, I want you to think about the drop-off or flake factor of volunteers at each step that they go through to really work, at least start their first shift with you and your agency. So first contact recruitment, and that can be your website with a volunteer page. It could be something like Volunteer Match or Idealist or Craigslist where you have a volunteer listing. It could be posters in the library and the community center. It could be word of mouth. But what is that first point of contact? And when they reach out to you to become a volunteer, how long do they have to wait for an answer? Hopefully no more than 24 hours. But if you're working part-time, you're only working 15 or 20 hours a week, you're juggling all these things, and realistically you can't respond to correspondence in a day, then at least very clearly set and then meet the expectations of clear, consistent communication from first contact all the way through to first shift and beyond. So if you have to say something right on your webpage, right in your recruitment materials, like, please allow 3 business days for us to answer your email. We're a small department of 1. If you have to say something like that, that's better than not stating that and have someone just never hear from you again. And there's tons of horror stories about potential volunteers trying really hard to join organizations and just being never contacted again, or contacted weeks or months later when they've long since moved on. So first point of contact is key. Remember my key catchphrase: every interaction with a volunteer is an invitation to stay or an invitation to go. So on that first contact piece, everyone in your organization who's answering a phone, answering an email, talking about volunteering with your agency out in the public, everyone should know at least 3 things, 30 seconds, elevator pitch, or up to a 3-minute conversation about the basics of becoming a volunteer or donor or supporter of your agency. Everyone, all hands on deck, should know that messaging. You also want to then think about screening and onboarding. I have another video here about the barriers of background checks and screening, when that's truly necessary and when it's too much of a burden for someone, either time or money, or they don't know what you're looking for and it frightens them. They don't want to interact with an agency that's doing fingerprinting. But screening is usually another big drop-off point. If there are requirements, again, of time and money, those are the biggest barriers or hardest hoops for people to jump through. Is it going to cost them a lot of time and money to become a volunteer with you? Onboarding or orientation, if that's something that's done online or in person, do your best to make that as convenient as possible. Sometimes I've seen drop in once a month. Anyone can show up to orientation who's done the basic paperwork, or that's where they do the basic paperwork. It can also be really easy and flexible for people's schedules. Again, that time and money consideration of a barrier or hoop to jump through, to have it some orientation online that someone just, does an e-learning or checks off that they've read a manual or read some material or watched a little video. And that can save your time as well, to kind of automate as much as possible in this process while still keeping that human touch. So high tech, high touch balance. Then you get to training and the first shift. So those might be together. You may not have separate points in this journey map all along the way in your agency, but understand that, very often the time or money that needs to be devoted to training may not work for everybody. So that, selects people out, even if they would be great volunteers. And then when they get to their first shift, make sure that the culture, at least on the team they're joining, hopefully in the whole agency or at least in your volunteer services department, is a welcoming and very warm and informed team setting that someone is joining. So when they join, they maybe have a buddy or mentor, or it's really clear who their team leader is, and that person is a friendly personality who likes to work with new people and can answer any questions that a new volunteer has, because nobody likes to fail. No one wants to start a new project or learn a new skill or meet a new bunch of people and feel awkward and embarrassed and like they're not doing it well enough. So do your best to set up any potential new volunteer for success, have proper resources for them. Do they need a computer desk? Is there a certain dress code they need to know about? Whatever it is, we just, no one likes the feeling of failure. So do your best to create a warm and welcoming environment. The biggest reason that people stop volunteering once they start is usually that they're having a really bad experience. They're having a bad time, either with bias, with bigotry, there's chaos, or there's drama, or they just don't feel welcome, or it just feels like the whole agency, or at least their team, is not really well resourced or organized, and that there isn't a sense of we're all in this together. It may be more of a competitive than a cooperative team culture. So do your best to recognize that and adjust for that, because no one wants to show up on their first day thinking they're going to have a good time and they hear a really bigoted or racist or biased joke about exactly who they are. So if there's a toxic personality or a problem person and you suspect that people are leaving because of them, it's going to be better for the agency in the long run, no matter how long that toxic person has been there. More Tuesday tips about that, to get rid of that person and solve that problem so they don't keep other new volunteers away or make people quit and create that high turnover. So first contact to first shift and beyond, those are some of the basics. You can also utilize probably functions in your volunteer management software system, whatever system that is. Doesn't have to be VSysOne, they're just the ones sponsoring this webinar very generously. But figure out who is visiting your web page. So work with IT or web designer, whoever that is on your team, whatever service that is, contact customer service or technical support within your agency or outside with your web host, and get the data on who is visiting your volunteer page. Is it a well-designed volunteer page? Is it easy to sign up to volunteer? Is all the information about the different kinds of jobs and requirements, is that clear? Are you clearly setting and meeting expectations from that first digital contact? If not, work to improve that, because that's going to help a lot as well. And that also applies to, again, Volunteer Match, Idealist, Craigslist. If you're putting out on any other kind of recruitment platform, make sure that your job listings are really clear. I talk about that in the problem with penguins. You can also get data about screening and onboarding and training by doing volunteer surveys, gently asking people along the way, making sure, are you comfortable with your training? Are you comfortable with your tasks? Do you need any other resources? But again, setting up kind of like a buddy system or team leader, or a little bit of mentorship or job shadowing. If someone's doing something in person is important. If people are doing remote roles, then yeah, that's a different style of volunteer or employee engagement that you need to utilize. But just kind of having, again, consistent and clear communication, setting and meeting expectations, and having everyone working with potential new volunteers, which is really just everyone in your agency talking to the general public at any time in the community, that every interaction is an invitation to stay or an invitation to go. So if you don't get information and data about where you're seeing drop-offs, what percentage of people that is, then you can't figure out the why of drop-offs or flake factor. And then if you can't figure out the why of it, you can't solve for it. So I want you to, at least from these tips, if not from the webinar on Thursday or the recording of the webinar, which once that's available, if you can't tune in live on Thursday, I'll put that link below. But I want you to think about why people are self-selecting out or being discouraged from volunteering with your organization at all of these steps along the way. And then do they stay because they're having a meaningful or good experience, or do you find that they drop off soon after the first shift, and why is that? So ask some important questions, be transparent, be honest with yourself, be honest about the feedback you get from volunteers having this experience of onboarding, and hopefully that helps you improve the process, take away some of the barriers, take away some of the hoops to jump through for folks, so that you get the best fit of people on your team for the roles that you have. So I hope you enjoy these Tuesday tips. As always, hit like, subscribe, hit the little alert bell when I have a new video up, and we'll see you next time with more tips. Take care.